Greetings, ladies. This is Fernando again, and I just wanted to say I had a great time at the event, at the New York State Women Inc. event, and as I promised you, here is the video. It's a short video. I'm going to try to keep it to between 10 to 15 minutes so that it's an optimal size for you. So, the intent of the presentation was, how do you break the mold of traditional communications, or how do you deliver yourself to every opportunity that is faced upon you, be it a business opportunity or a personal opportunity? How do you deliver yourself such that you appear very confident and you appear someone that is poised, graceful, and is ready for success? So, if you recall, I shared the story about myself. Shortly after Renee introduced me, I shared the story about how I was an engineer and I had a couple of evolutions in my career, from being an engineer into being an entrepreneur, starting a property management company, and then just recently, over the last 5 years, starting a speaking career and growing that business. And then what I left out on that was in my introduction was the importance, or I guess my background before that, before I became an engineer, on how I was a very shy. I wouldn't say introverted because I was more outgoing, but I was very shy and I had severe issues in presenting to a group of individuals of more than one person. The way I was able to overcome that is to work on my craft day after day, work on my craft and confront my fears. So what I did is I actually looked back at my career, at my path, and I said, what was the reasons, like the number 1 or 2 reasons that actually helped me be successful in all my entrepreneurial evolutions, from being an engineer, my engineering career, and then from there to being an entrepreneur, and then from being an entrepreneur to starting this speaking business. And it was truly my focus on being powerful from a communication standpoint. So I have extracted 5 key lessons which I'm going to share with you on this video. This is the exact same video presentation that I shared with you at the event on June 4th. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the first slide, and I'm just going to adjust my picture down over here. So the first skill that I want to equip you with, that you can walk away and keep in your pocket, is that every time we communicate to 2 different brains. And I'll further explain that. We have 2 parts of our brains. One is the neocortex, which is the newer part of our brain, which is responsible for analytical decisions, such as, hey, if I buy this home, how much of interest payments am I going to make versus mortgage payments? How much of my total mortgage payment actually goes to interest? How much of it goes to principal? That's an analytical part of your brain. That's the neocortex. The limbic side of the brain looks at that house and says, wow, I really like that house. I really like that home. I have an emotional connection to that home. So those are the 2 parts of the brain. The way we communicate, as I'm communicating to you now on this video, I am processing information in my neocortex. I'm processing it to make sure it's legible, it makes sense, and it's in the context of what we're speaking about. However, when you receive this information on your end, you're not receiving it in your neocortex. You're receiving it in your limbic side of the brain, which is the emotional part of the brain. So what I need to do is, as a communicator, I need to appeal to the limbic side of the brain, which is the emotional side of the brain, and make sure that you trust every single message that I'm sending you. If not, what happens is your wall goes up and you will not listen to me. So the lesson here is that every opportunity, be it business or be it personal, every opportunity that you have to communicate with people, always appeal to the limbic brain. How do you do that? You appeal to the limbic brain by focusing on the emotion. Why do you exist? Why does your business exist? What are you here for? Don't wow people with charts and graphics and stats and all that. That stuff is important, but it comes later on down the road. So if you recognized when I opened up this presentation or this video, I started off with a quick story about how as a child, before I had my evolution or my evolutions as a business person, I really had no self-confidence myself to be able to present. That in itself was appealing to your limbic brain, hoping that you would say, hey, here's a guy who is a communicator now, he's a professional speaker now, but you know what? He went through the path of not being confident, but he confronted his fears and he was able to extract self-confidence. So the lesson here is that always appeal to the limbic brain. Through your neocortex, appeal to the limbic brain, which is emotion and why you exist, why your business exists. The next lesson, so that's just to reinforce that is build trust by communicating to the limbic brain. The next message, or the next nugget that I want to equip you with, the second nugget, is frame control. We touched on frame control, and I talked about the importance of each person understanding that there's two ways you can dominate a person. You can dominate someone, which is not recommended, which is seen as being a bully, or you can dominate a situation. And that is really how you dominate. You dominate a situation so that, or you dominate an outcome such that you can get mutual benefit. So I'll give you a quick rundown on this. Each person has a frame. That's a perspective on life. Picture a picture frame. You have this picture frame. You're looking at the world through this picture frame. There's two components to each person's frame. There's the learned component and there's the authenticity component. The authenticity component is who we are as individuals, how we're made up, my background, my parents, my cultural upbringing, my religion, my educational background, just everything about me as an individual. To a certain extent, I can't really change that. However, the learned component, which is my experiences, my education, how I'm teaching myself, how I'm bettering myself, how I'm confronting my fears to be better, how I'm learning the job, my skills at my job and increasing my skills, that's how you dominate a situation. So for example, I've prided myself on being a top communicator. So every time I attend a meeting or I attend a conference call, I always make sure I have an agenda set up for myself and for the participants of that meeting such that I can take a person from point A to point Z through an organized fashion. The way I do that is by I've increased my communication skills. I've increased my learned component to be able to garner people or foster people or shepherd people through my process. So anytime I go to a meeting, anytime I attend a conference call, anytime I do a Skype call or a video conference, I have an agenda. Person who controls the agenda controls the outcome of the meeting. So remember, frame control. It's not about dominating the person. It's about dominating the situation, dominating the outcome of the situation, and thereby drawing mutual benefit to you and to your business and to the person that you're meeting with. Now think about that from a business perspective. If you can dominate your market space, not necessarily dominate your competitors or your clients, but dominate your market space by giving clients an awesome product that really helps them go from point A, which is their problem, to point Z, which is the solution. That's what frame control is. So, quick little recap on that is frame control is the ability to dominate the outcome, dominate the situation such that there is mutual benefit to you and the person that you're meeting with. The next is mind elasticity, and I talked about the looseness of keeping your mind flexible, and the example I gave was the challenge that I put out there, and I believe at this presentation one of the young ladies asked me to speak about the exit sign, and it was just an impromptu situation, and I was able to speak about the exit sign. I also spoke about the example of myself and how I was able to pivot my business because I kept mind elasticity, and flexibility in the way I communicate. The story that I shared was when I received a call from California National Bank over to my office in Manchester, New Hampshire on a property they were foreclosing, and how I was able to pivot my business and grab that opportunity to be able to grow my business. So the lesson for you is think about how you can be flexible in your mind, in your business, such that any situation that's thrown upon you, you're able to gather it, accept it, using the power of yes and, which is the number one rule of improv, which is yes and. Yes, I accept the challenge and I further the scene. So practice that. Practice mind elasticity. The way I was able to do my impromptu speech, I'm going to break it down. First step is to jump into an example. So when the challenge was given to me about the exit sign, first thing I did was I jumped into the example of an authentic example that I had banked away in my mind. How do you bank away authentic examples in your mind? It's being present in every opportunity, every time that you're experiencing life, whether you're meeting with someone, whether you're driving on the road, whether you're in an office meeting. Be present at that meeting and gather those stories. There's so many opportunities out there. We live a life, a unique life. Gather those opportunities, bank it away, and when you're given a challenge, retrieve that from your mind. So jump right into an example. Second item is to justify your example with 2 or 3 facts, and then finally close out your example with a thought-provoking ending, a piece of advice, a cliffhanger, something that's going to give your audience something to think about. So, brought into a business context, when I was presented with the opportunity to pivot my business and take over foreclosures in the state of New Hampshire, the first thing I did with Chris Gullidge, who was on the phone with me from California, was I jumped into an example of what I could do for him. I justified it with 2 or 3 facts on exactly what my service offering to him would be, that I would inspect his property. If you remember the story, I would inspect his property. I would take video footage of the property and send it to him. I jumped into 2 or 3 facts, and then I left it with a cliffhanger and said that I would deliver the most outstanding product for him and help him be able to position this property for eventual sale. So, perfect the art of improvisation using the power of a yes and. Yes and is the number one rule in improv, stand-up comedy. The number one rule is yes, you accept the challenge, and you further the scene. The next one is the power of nonverbal communications. So I had talked about Sean Stevenson, who was the good friend of mine. He's a professional speaker himself. He is 3 feet tall. He suffers from a condition known as osteogenesis. And Sean Stevenson shared these 3 powerful things about powerful body language. Basically, there's many different kinds of body language. There's haptics, there's proxemics, there's eye gazes. It's a whole science behind it, and we could choose to read those books and really get confused on the power of body language, or just do a quick review of some of the most important aspects that would be able to increase your power and your stance by probably good 80%. So here's the concept of powerful body language. Let me see if I can move this over slightly. The concept of powerful body language, and bear with me, my face is going to be slightly half cut off here. The concept of powerful body language is threefold. The first one is that you've got to keep your 3 zones open. There are 3 power zones in every human being. That is the dimple in the throat, the belly button, I talked about the belly button rule, and the stance on your lower extremities, which is your legs. If those 3 zones are always left open in every single situation, be it a meeting, be it a presentation, be it a conference call, even when you're on a conference call, believe me, powerful body language that you maintain here within your office, within your 4 walls, does transmit through a phone. It does transmit through an email. So make sure that those zones are always left open. If those are left open, people see you as a confident, powerful winner. Remember, 93% of communication is actually based on not what we say, not the content, it's how we say it. So it's the tone of the voice, it's my voice inflection, it's the enthusiasm that I have in my voice, but it's also in the way that you project yourself and your body image. Now, as entrepreneurs and as powerful business ladies, we always want to push the envelope. So to push the envelope, we jump into a couple of quick power gestures. The power gestures that I've spoken about, that I've actually been using on this call just because I've trained myself to be able to do this, is the steeple. By keeping your fingers all connected like this is called a steeple. It actually scientifically increases your testosterone level, and it decreases your cortisol level, which is your stress hormone. And by doing this, it shows a high level of self-confidence, it shows intelligence, and it depicts trust. Now, the expanded steeple is the basketball steeple, which is, you spell the word trust in there, and you'll see a lot of politicians actually doing this when they're speaking, is they're trying to justify a point, but they're showing trust. Open palm gestures. Typically, it's right about where the chest level is. It's about here, and that just shows a high level of confidence and trust. Then the next was powerful eye gazes. We've read so many books and we've heard so many people saying that eye gaze is really important. Make sure you keep eye contact. And yes, eye contact is important. However, eye contact, what most people misconstrue for eye contact, is staring directly into the eye, which is really uncomfortable. I think I challenged the pet owners or the dog owners in my presentation to go home and stare at their dog and see how uncomfortable the dog gets. So powerful eye gaze is actually not staring in the eyes. It's the traversing through a little triangle. Picture a dot on your head and traversing between that zone. That is actually powerful eye gaze, because it keeps the person that you're communicating with comfortable, because you're not staring right into their eyes. If you feel a sense of comfort with the person that you're working with, so in other words, it becomes more of a friendly business relationship as opposed to a pure business relationship, that triangle can be inverted down from the eyes down to the mouth, and like that. So it's an inverted triangle going like that. So that's the triangular eye gaze, which is really important. For ladies, the stance, we talk about a powerful stance, and it's the Superwoman stance, which is the picture over, and I'm just going to move my video over here, so it's this gaze, this stance over there. That's the powerful stance for ladies. It actually can be used by men as well, but I've typically seen it with powerful women in boardrooms tend to use that position. Counteractions, that is when we are doing something that's not of confidence. So for example, when we get nervous, we tend to self-touch ourselves. And when we self-touch, we're typically self-touching on the zones that we are supposed to keep left open, the 3 zones. So we will typically touch the zones such as the dimple in our throat, our midsection, and we would probably keep our legs at a very not a very wide stance. So what you want to do when you counteract is, if you do need to self-touch, you do what I call the Steve Jobs pose. So if I do get nervous on this call and I'm speaking with you and I need to start doing this, which would depict lack of self-confidence, I would probably just do this and do the Steve Jobs pose, and this gives me a sense of comfort. I still am self-touching, however, I don't look like I'm nervous. The next is the seated position, and I would almost role play it here if I could on this video. If I were to sit like the first individual there, I don't think you guys would have a high level of confidence or enthusiasm in this video. But by sitting up and keeping my zones and the dimple in my throat open and exposed, and my arms exposed as much as I can, I'm showing enthusiasm, I'm showing trust, I'm showing connection to you. The next was the The fig leaf position, which is typically done by many men as they are posing for or pictures. They don't know what to do with these big floppy things called arms. So when they're standing or posing for a picture, they tend to cover up again their midsection, which breaks the rule of the powerful concept, keep the zones open. So what I've said is, if you need to grab your hands, flip those arms right to the back so that you're actually doing that on your rear end. You're still holding yourself, but you're keeping a full frontal open. That keeps your position open. So that's powerful body language for you. Boost your nonverbal skills. That's the power message there. Is really always think about powerful body language. 93% of how people judge us is not by what we say, it's really by how we say it, the tone of voice, the inflection, the enthusiasm in which we say things, and then how we actually carry ourselves. That is 93% of how people judge us. So if it is that much impact, folks, and ladies, and powerful ladies, you probably want to work on that more so than the content of your actual presentation. And finally, the power of storytelling. We talked about my formula. I'm going to move my picture down here. The power of telling an effective story. You can have all the self-confidence in the world. You can have all the powerful body language in the world, but if you can't bring it all together with the power of an effective story, then really there is no point to it. So the formula is ICUDP, being, and I'll break down each one. I is intrigue. Each story should start with intrigue. And if you go back into our brain and our neocortex and our limbic brain, intrigue is a part of the story, the opening of your story, that appeals straight to the limbic brain. So most people like to open up presentations with formulas or stats, or 25% of the population is making under 50,000. I mean, these are stats that people really don't want to hear, because what happens is it appeals to the neocortex and people start analyzing that. When you communicate a message, you don't want people to analyze it right from the get-go. Analysis is important, but not right from the get-go. Right from the get-go, what you want to do is appeal to the emotion. So start off each story, start off each email, start off any form of communication that you do with intrigue. Second one is conflict. If you think about Hollywood exists because of conflict. Every story has an element of conflict, and out of that conflict emerges a hero, someone who actually solved the conflict. So make sure that your story has conflict. The next was undulating content. U is undulating content. How do you go up and down? How do you weave your story up and down such that you engage, capture, and engage people and keep them engaged? If you think about a typical keynote that I do my typical keynotes are between an hour and an hour and a half. And if I can't engage my audience for an hour and a half, if I can't weave them up and down through this undulating content, I'm going to lose people. So here's a quick theory on how you undulate your content. On the lower end of your story, which is the negative side of your story, it is the what is. So when I shared my story, I talked about how I was so nervous to present to my grade 10 class, and I jumped out of school and I ran away. That is my what is. What is was I was nervous, I was thirsty, I was scared, I jumped out of school, and I could not present to my grade 10 class. My what could be was, imagine if I could develop the skills to be a powerful speaker. Just imagine if I could. I would start a business and teach people how to do that. So there you go. That's the what is I was nervous. This is the negative. This is the low point of my life. And the what could be is my dream, my vision. I wish I could get there. So that's undulating content. D is detail. Each story, every time you relay a story, whether it's written or it's being spoken, you need to have a level of detail that awakens the senses. Awaken your 6 senses that that shows people, oh, this is how excited I was, this is how tired I was, this is how it smelled, this is how nervous I was. Explain and bring out these senses. Bring out enough detail in your story that you take your audience right to that zone. And finally, plan close. Most people deliver a very powerful story and then they end by just saying, thank you. Plan your close. Think about how you're going to close that story. Is it thought-provoking? Is it a thought-provoking ending? Is it a piece of advice that you want people to take? Is it a lesson? Is it an action item that you want them to make? Whatever it is, make sure that you plan your close. So, ladies, with that, I am coming close to the end of the content of the presentation. So remember, practice the art of powerful storytelling using the ICU-DP formula. So, to recap this presentation, it's all a system. It all begins with powerful communication, delivering yourself with confidence, breaking the mold of traditional communications. If you want to communicate different than everyone else, so that you look different, you stand out, it's all a system. And the system is right there on your screen. It's what I call the circle or the wheel of communication. First is establish trust. Right in the center of the circle, you got to communicate trust. How do you communicate trust? You appeal to the limbic brain. Then you jump into domination. The right kind of domination. Not dominating an individual, dominating the outcome. Then you keep your mind so flexible and nimble, mind elasticity. The power of improv is yes and. How do you keep yourself so flexible so you can pivot yourself or your business such that you can adjust and adapt to market conditions? Body language. How do you maintain powerful nonverbals so that 93% of the time when people judge you, they look at you and say, wow, there is a confident individual. There is an enthusiastic individual that I want to work with. And then you bring it all together with the power of story. And all these work together. I closed by telling you how I have butterflies in my stomach. Even on this call, even on this video, I have butterflies in my stomach, but I've trained them to fly in formation. So with that, my plan close, ladies, is I encourage you, I challenge you to print out this presentation or print out that wheel of communication and practice it. Work on your craft. By working on your craft, you can drive powerful results for yourself. I was able to do that. I was an individual who was in grade 10 who could not present to my own class, and I was able to become an engineer, grow very rapidly in my engineering career, make an entrepreneurial adjustment, jump into starting a property management company that grew to be the largest property management in the state of New Hampshire, evolved from that, started a speaking career, and I have spoken internationally all across the world, all across Southeast Asia, all across the Middle East, and all across the United States. This is a guy who could not speak to a grade 10 class. So I encourage you to confront your fears, try the circle of communication that I spoke of, and stay connected with me. My email address, I will actually jump right down to my email address here, which is right over here. It's francis@francisfernando.com. Feel free to drop me a line. I am also creating a class, a short class. It's going to be a very inexpensive class, strictly on on how to break the mold of traditional communications. How do you actually take each of those and break it down so that you can actually utilize this? It's going to be an online course. It's going to be really cheap. It's probably going to be less than $20, and I'll make sure that you get notification of that class. It'll probably be ready within a week, and feel free to drop me an email if you're interested in signing up for that class. I'm hoping to price it depending on how much time and how much resources are involved in that, probably around the $19.99 price point. So stay connected with me, drop me a line, and I wish you well. Thank you.